I walked through my own front door and felt something was off. The lock wasn't turned, for one, and that never happened if my wife was alone inside. She always locked up, even if I was due home any minute. That day, I got off work early because the news shipment arrived sooner than expected and Jason needed me back at the warehouse. But I stopped by the house first to grab a change of clothes. I wasn't planning on seeing anything out of the ordinary. I just wanted to switch shirts, maybe splash some water on my face. But the way the door gave way so easily set me on edge. I didn't call out her name. Usually I'd say, "Hey, I'm home," or something. But my mouth stayed shut. The hallway was kind of dark. I remember hearing a faint thump from somewhere near the bedroom. Then another sound, like a low groan. Could have been someone stubbing a toe, or maybe a noise from the TV. But it didn't sound like a TV. It sounded too real. My gut tightened up. I stepped slow, my boots heavier on the carpet than they should have been. I was telling myself, maybe she's with a friend, or maybe she's having one of her workout sessions with the volume turned down. Except it didn't feel right. The closer I got to the bedroom, the more I heard it. It was muffled. Soft, but not that soft. A rhythm of something. Breathing, maybe? I can't quite describe it. I just know it sure as hell didn't belong in my house with the door unlocked and me creeping around like a burglar. My hand landed on the doorknob, and I felt I shouldn't open it. A part of me wanted to turn around, walk back to the truck, drive off. Act like I never came home. Let her do what she was doing, whatever it was, in peace. Because once you see something, you can't unsee it. I pushed the door, maybe hoping it was stuck. But it wasn't. It swung right open. And then there she was, my wife, straddling some kid. The kid was young. Early 20s, if that. I recognized him almost immediately, though it took my head a moment to register. It was Evan, the new guy who'd started working our forklift just a couple months back. 20 years old. A tall, lanky kid. You'd never peg him for the type who'd be in your bedroom with your wife. She was on top, staring straight at me with this expression I can't forget. Like I was the intruder. No panic, no shame. Just a glint of annoyance, maybe. He turned his head, looked at me upside down from the pillow. Didn't move, didn't push her off. His eyes met mine for a second, and I saw him swallow. But still, he didn't roll her off or scramble for his clothes. It was like they wanted me to see. Or maybe they just didn't care enough to hide it. My wife broke eye contact first. She turned her head like she couldn't be bothered. It felt like a door slamming in my face. I stood there. The smell of sweat and a hint of her shampoo in the air. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't feel anything except this cold wave run from my spine to my legs. It froze me in place. I must have stared for a few seconds watching them. Maybe it was only a moment, but it felt long. I couldn't speak. Couldn't even bring myself to yell. I wasn't sure of who I hated more in that instant, her, him, or me for standing there like a fool. Finally I walked out, back down the hall. My brain was screaming, but my mouth stayed shut. I heard them shift behind me, but no one came running after me. She didn't say my name. He didn't try to explain. Nothing. Just the sound of the bed springs squeaking as I reached the kitchen. I stood by the sink, staring at the calendar pinned to the fridge door. It still had her handwriting on it. Dentist appointment next Wednesday, groceries on Friday, some sale at the mall. Normal stuff. Like a life that was still intact. I looked around, saw a bottle of chili sauce on the counter. A brand I used to like with tacos or wings. I had no idea what I was doing. I just grabbed that bottle, twisted off the cap. My brain was numb, but my body moved. I went back to the bedroom, stepping right to my side of the bed. The pillow where I usually laid my head. I poured the sauce over it until the bottle was empty. I didn't say a word. The chili smell was overwhelming in that small space. She looked at me then. Maybe she was surprised, maybe not. Hard to tell. Evan just stared, not even covering himself. I felt done. There was nothing left to do, so I walked outside, got in my truck, and drove away. I didn't think about where to spend the night. I didn't think about who to call. I ended up behind the warehouse, parked near the loading dock. My truck's cabin stank of fish from the last run. We'd hauled boxes of frozen tilapia across 3 states, and the smell clings to everything. Usually, I'd complain or crack the window, but that night I didn't care. The seat wasn't comfortable, but I wasn't about to check into a motel. I just curled up with my jacket over me. Try not to picture her on that bed with him underneath. Try not to think at all, but it's impossible to silence that kind of hurt. I stared out the windshield for hours. The security lights around the loading dock flickered on and off. A few stray cats wandered by, rummaging in the dumpsters. I kept seeing their silhouettes, tails flicking in the half-dark. Reminded me of nights I spent on the road, hauling cargo with no real destination in mind, just passing the miles. But this was different. This was me parked in my own town, avoiding my own house. I felt smaller than a stray cat. Less dignified, somehow. Because at least a stray cat is where it's supposed to be, scavenging for food, living out its life. I was just a man sitting in the dark, stinking of fish, with a burning picture in my head I wished I could erase. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. My phone buzzed once around midnight. I thought it might be her texting me. Turned out it was a weather alert. I chucked the phone onto the passenger seat. I imagined her back home, maybe showering or laughing or going about her business. I wondered if Evan was still there. I kept picturing his dumb face. He always wore a backward cap at the warehouse until the boss told him to take it off. Just a kid. Never thought he was bright, but he could move a forklift well enough. People said he was friendly. We gave him a chance. Hired him, trained him, joked around with him. And he took that as an invitation to crawl into my wife's bed. Or maybe she invited him. I didn't know anymore. At some point I drifted off. Woke up stiff and cold when the morning sun hit the windshield. My neck ached, and my clothes reeked. I didn't have a toothbrush in the truck. Just a bottle of water. I rinsed my mouth, spat out the window. My eyes felt swollen from no sleep, and my mind was raw. I stared at the clock on the dash. 5:40 a.m. normally. I'd be at the warehouse by 7:30. But I figured, hell, I'll go in now. I started the engine. The forklift guys don't show up until 7 o'clock or so. But the boss sometimes gets in early, and I thought maybe I could duck into the break room, wash up a bit. I pulled into the parking lot, found my usual spot near the chain-link fence. No one else was there yet. The place looked empty. I locked up my truck and stepped inside. Quiet. The overhead lights were off except for a few on the emergency setting. My boots echoed down the corridor. I went straight to the restrooms, stood in front of the grimy mirror. My reflection looked older than I remembered. A few new lines on my forehead, maybe. My hair was thinning. My eyes were bloodshot. I just splashed water on my face, dried off with paper towels. No reason to think about it too hard. When I came back out to the loading bay, I saw the first shift guys trickling in. A few of them said good morning. I nodded, forced a half-smile. Jason walked in, raising a brow when he saw me. He was a good worker. Not exactly my best friend, but a reliable coworker I'd known for years. He didn't ask why I was there so early. Maybe he sensed I wasn't in a talking mood. The clock on the wall read 6:10. I realized I still had about an hour until Evan typically showed up. A wave of something like dread or anger washed through me. I shut my eyes, took a deep breath. Told myself to keep it together. At that moment, I decided I was going to handle it my way. No big scene. No confrontation in front of the staff. I didn't want to get fired or ruin my own reputation. So I waited. I told Jason there was a long route that needed covering, 2 days on the road. We had to move some cargo from Montana back down to Cheyenne, or so I said. He shrugged and said if I needed help, I could pick anyone. That's exactly what I wanted. By the time the clock hit 7 o'clock, I was leaning against the wall near the forklift area, waiting for Evan to walk in. And he did, just like always, with that dopey expression, lunch pail in hand. He blinked when he saw me. I gave him a nod. "Hey, kid," I said, voice calm. "Boss said he needs 2 of us on a long haul. You up for it?" He hesitated. I saw his eyes flicker to my face. Then he just nodded, like a puppy wanting approval. "Sure," he said. "No questions asked?" I felt something twist inside me. It was all too easy. I led him to one of the trucks we use for out-of-state runs. He tossed his bag inside, then glanced at me. So, how long we gonna be gone?" he asked. I slid into the driver's seat, jammed the key in the ignition. "Couple days. We gotta make a few stops, pick up a load in Montana, then head back." He climbed into the passenger seat. For a second, I wondered if he suspected anything. But if he did, he didn't show it. Maybe he thought I was clueless about what had happened the day before. Or maybe he was just too stupid or too proud to think I'd do anything about it. We pulled away from the warehouse as the sun was getting higher in the sky. I didn't bother turning on the radio. Evan shifted in his seat, probably uncomfortable with the silence. He cleared his throat a few times. Kept glancing at me, then looking away. I could feel his nerves. But I stayed quiet, my hands gripping the wheel. My thoughts were a mess. Part of me wanted to punch him in the face right there. Another part of me wanted to pretend everything was normal. I didn't trust myself to speak without losing it, so I let the hum of the engine fill the space. A couple hours in, we stopped at a rest area to stretch our legs. He followed me out, and we stood by the railing, overlooking some farmland. The wind was cold. He leaned against the guardrail, rubbed his arms. "So," he said finally, "I guess you heard about me and you know." He coughed, then tried again. "I mean, did you? He wanted to ask if I knew. That was obvious. I looked straight ahead at the fields, the rows of crops looking like stripes on the land. I said nothing. Let him stew in that question. My silence was heavy. I saw him swallow. His Adam's apple bobbed. He must have realized I wasn't going to respond. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, then said, "Look, I don't want any trouble. It's just, it happened. She said it was fine. She said you guys were basically done anyway." I closed my eyes. My jaw clenched so tight it hurt. He didn't know anything about my marriage. About my life. He only saw what my wife told him. And apparently she said we were done. That made me exhale a bitter laugh. Like I was the last to know. I turned and went back to the truck, leaving him to stand there. A few minutes later he followed, shoulders hunched. We drove on. The highway stretched out in front of us like a gray tongue leading north. Occasionally, I'd see signs for upcoming towns, places we could get gas, maybe grab a quick meal. But I wasn't hungry. My stomach felt twisted. Around noon, I pulled into a truck stop. Evan hopped out, probably relieved for the break. We each got coffee, then sat across from each other at a plastic table in the little diner section. He kept fiddling with his phone. The place smelled like burnt fries and bleach. A waitress gave us a nod, refilled our coffees. He sipped his cup. "I'm real sorry, man," he mumbled. "I didn't want it to happen like that." I stared into my coffee, swirling it around. My reflection distorted in the surface. I could feel my heart pounding. The memory of them together in my bed just wouldn't leave my head. Finally, I looked up. "You shut up for now," I said quietly. He froze, eyes wide. "Drink your coffee. Let's finish this route." I stood, left him sitting there, took my cup to go. I'm not proud of how I spoke, but I couldn't keep up the facade of politeness. We got back on the road. This time he didn't try to make small talk. He just sat there, fiddling with the radio, turning the dial from one fuzzy station to another. I noticed his knee bouncing up and down. The tension was thick. Neither of us knew how this trip would end, and I guess both of us were too stubborn or scared to bring it out in the open. Late in the afternoon, we crossed into Montana. The scenery changed, more open sky, the mountains in the distance. The truck rumbled along, and I tried to focus on the road, the steady lines of the asphalt. But my mind kept drifting back to her. The way she turned her head like I was nothing. The way Evan looked so casual beneath her. All these images slammed around in my skull. I wanted them out. Couldn't get rid of them. Couldn't think straight. Night fell, and we stopped at a roadside motel. We got 2 separate rooms. The boss would normally never pay for that, but I had no intention of sleeping in the same damn room as him. We found a cheap place with flickering neon lights, the kind of spot truckers used to crash for a few hours. He didn't complain or ask questions. He just grabbed his bag, said goodnight. I locked my door, sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. My reflection stared back from the TV screen. I felt old, tired. A sense of betrayal gnawed at me. Betrayal not just from her, but from him, from the world, from myself for letting it happen. I closed my eyes, tried to sleep, but I kept replaying that moment in the bedroom, the hush, the way they didn't move or act sorry. Then the chili sauce on the pillow. I'm not even sure why I did that, but I remember the slow gurgle of the sauce as it soaked through the fabric. It felt almost petty. But in that instant, it was all I had. Next morning, Evan looked nervous as he climbed back into the passenger seat. He tried to joke. I slept on a mattress that felt like plywood, he said, forcing a grin. I shrugged. It's a bed, I muttered. We pulled back onto the highway. I kept thinking about the next move. How far could I push this? Did I want to fight him? Did I want to teach him a lesson? Or did I just want to forget it all? Eventually, we rolled into a bigger truck stop somewhere on the route. I can't say exactly where. Might have been near Great Falls. The station had a convenience store, a few pumps, a small parking lot off to the side. I parked the truck and turned off the engine. Evan said, "We fueling up?" I nodded, then got out. He hopped down, started walking toward the store. I trailed behind him, hands in my pockets. The air smelled of diesel and fast food. The noise of cars whooshing by on the interstate filled my ears. Inside, he headed straight for the restroom. I stood by the racks of chips and candy bars, waiting. My mind was churning. I looked at the keychain on my belt, the set of keys for the truck. Then I glanced at the row of little postcards on a spinny rack, pictures of mountains, big rigs, cowboy hats, typical tourist junk. I realized I was about to do something I'd never done before. Something that was wrong in more ways than one. He came out, wiping his hands on his jeans. We went to the cashier. He grabbed a soda and some gum. I pretended to look at a magazine, then said, "Let me see your wallet for a second. Need to check something for the route." It was a stupid lie, but he didn't question me. He reached into his back pocket, handed me the wallet. I flipped it open, looked at his ID. Evan Walters, 20 years old. Then, before he could realize what I was doing, I stuffed the wallet into my jacket pocket. I nodded at the key ring sticking out from his belt loop. "Truck keys," I said. "Hand them over. I gotta rearrange something." He frowned a bit, but he took them off and handed them to me. Like a dog giving up a bone. I dropped a 20 on the counter for his soda, turned, and walked out. For a second, I thought he might follow. But he didn't. He must have stayed to pick up his change or get a receipt. Once I was outside, I moved fast, climbed into the driver's seat, jammed the keys in the ignition. The truck roared to life. My heart pounded in my chest. As I pulled away from the pump, I saw him come out of the store. His hands were empty, and there was confusion on his face. He started jogging, then running, waving his arms. I kept going. Sped up until I was back on the highway. I didn't look back. My hands shook on the wheel. My gut felt hollow. I'd left a 20-year-old kid in the middle of Montana with no cash, no phone, no keys, nothing. And for a split second, I felt a flash of relief. Like I'd gotten my revenge, or at least a piece of it. I drove for a while, not sure where I was heading. I just knew I didn't want to stop. The road unfurled ahead, and the sky was this pale blue stretching forever. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. I wanted silence. I wanted to outrun everything: her betrayal, my anger, my own sense of shame. But you can't outrun it. Not really. I kept driving until the fuel gauge dipped low. Must have been a couple hours. My mind was reeling, bouncing between rage, guilt, and an odd sense of satisfaction. I pictured Evan stranded there, in the middle of nowhere, with nothing but his cheap phone in his pocket. Wait, I realized I had his wallet, so maybe he didn't even have a phone on him. I couldn't recall if he tucked it away or not. Maybe it was in his jacket. Maybe not. Either way, I'd left him in a bad spot. My stomach growled, but I didn't feel like eating. I pulled into some rest area, turned off the engine, and just sat there. The truck smelled like sweat and leftover fast food wrappers. Outside, a few picnic tables dotted a patch of sun-scorched grass. A family was unloading from a minivan, kids running around. I stared at them, feeling disconnected from normal life. It was like looking at a different world, a world where people still believed in family trips and road games. I wondered what I'd do next. I was supposed to deliver a shipment. I'd basically abandoned that. The boss would be livid if he found out. But right then, that felt small compared to the mess in my life. I rubbed my temples. My phone was in my pocket, but I didn't want to see if there were calls or messages. I knew I should probably call Jason or the boss, come up with some excuse. Instead, I turned the key again, got back on the road without a clue. I drove aimlessly, taking exits without reading the signs, just to keep moving. The mountains loomed in the distance, sometimes to the left, sometimes to the right. The sky was huge, like it could swallow me whole. The truck rattled over cracked pavement. My back ached. The seat felt worn down. At one point, I realized I was heading south again, maybe looping back towards Wyoming. The day dragged on. I think I stopped for gas once more, paying cash so there'd be no paper trail. I felt paranoid, like I was on the run. From what exactly? My wife's betrayal? My own actions? Maybe everything. At some point late that night, I pulled into a small motel off the highway. The neon sign blinked vacancy in the dark. I checked in under my own name, though. Didn't see the point in lying about that. The clerk was half asleep, didn't care. The room smelled musty, but at least it had a bed and a working lock. I tossed my jacket on the chair, felt the weight of Evan's wallet in the pocket. Part of me wanted to toss it in the trash. Part of me wanted to open it and see if there was a photo of someone inside, his mom, maybe. I never did open it again. Just left it there. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Everything about my life felt foreign now. I thought about my wife, about how many times she might have brought someone home while I was out on a run. The idea of another man sitting in my recliner, maybe sipping a beer from my fridge, made my blood boil. But I also felt a hollowness. Like my house wasn't really mine anymore. The trust was gone, replaced by images I never asked to see. I must have dozed off at some point. Woke up before sunrise with a pounding headache. My eyes itched. I splashed water on my face in the bathroom sink, avoided looking in the mirror. Got back in the truck, started driving again. No real plan. Around mid-morning, I realized I was heading toward Cheyenne. Familiar highway markers started to appear, and my stomach twisted. I dreaded going back. Dreaded seeing the warehouse, the boss, or even Jason. But it's like my truck was on autopilot, taking me home whether I liked it or not. Early afternoon, I rolled into the warehouse lot. Parked on the far side. There weren't many vehicles around. The sun was beating down, reflecting off the asphalt in waves of heat. I saw my boss step out of the office, phone pressed to his ear. He spotted me and motioned me over. I felt my heart sink. I killed the engine, got out, walked across the lot. He was a short man, always wearing a clean collared shirt. Even in the heat, he looked composed. He hung up the phone. "Where the hell have you been?" he asked, voice tight. "And where's Evan?" I took a breath. "Ran into some trouble," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Kid was drinking while we drove." I told him to stop it, but he wouldn't. So I pulled over at a rest stop, told him to sober up. Next thing I know, he'd taken off. Left me with the truck, no sign of him. My boss stared, eyebrows shooting up. He was drinking? On the job? He shook his head. Damn kid. So he just took off? I nodded, did my best to look believable. I waited a while. Figured he'd come back. He never did. I tried calling him, but no answer. So eventually, I brought the truck back. Didn't know what else to do. He stood there, rubbed his chin. Well, that's a first. Not even a call. I shrugged. Yeah. I'm real sorry. I know we needed that load done. I'll cover the next one, no complaints. He waved it off. We'll figure it out. Go clock in. We'll talk later. Then he walked away, phone back to his ear. I felt a strange mix of relief and guilt. I just lied straight to his face. Threw Evan under the bus, or more like left him on the side of the road. But I was past the point of caring. Maybe it was wrong, but it was done. I headed into the locker room. I could feel eyes on me. Some of the guys must have noticed I was gone for a couple days. I avoided everyone, grabbed my spare shirt and jeans. I felt grimy from the road. Jason caught up to me as I was about to leave the locker room. He looked concerned. You okay? He asked, voice low. I gave him a nod, no details. He studied my face, maybe saw something broken there. But he didn't push. The boss is pissed about that misload, he said. Yeah, I muttered. I'll smooth it out. He hesitated, then lowered his voice further. Look, I don't know what's going on, but I heard some rumors. People saying you found Evan messing around with your wife. My chest tightened. I glanced at the door, making sure no one else was around. Don't listen to rumors, I muttered. I'll handle my own business. Jason swallowed. Sure. Just take care, man. He left, and I was alone, the echo of his words bouncing off the metal lockers. So the rumor mill was already spinning. Probably half the warehouse had some version of the story. Maybe none of them had it right. But it didn't matter. I just wanted to go home, shower, and figure out the next step. Except my home didn't feel like home anymore. The thought of stepping inside that bedroom made my guts churn. Still, I drove there, parked out front. The street was quiet, a couple of neighbors watering their lawns. I recognized the older woman next door giving me a wave. I lifted a hand in response, forced a tight smile. She probably had no idea what had gone down. Maybe she'd heard some noises, maybe not. Houses can be blind and deaf if you want them to be. I let myself in. It was empty. Quiet. My stomach nodded as I stepped into the hallway, the same hallway where I'd heard those sounds. I forced myself to walk to the bedroom door. Pushed it open. The bed was made, new sheets. No chili sauce anywhere. She must have cleaned it up. There was a faint smell of bleach, maybe. My pillow was replaced with a fresh one. I felt numb. Like I'd just walked onto a stage set that someone else had rearranged. I wandered into the living room, sank into my recliner. I used to fall asleep here sometimes, especially when my back pain flared up. I'd watch late-night news. She'd bring me a blanket. Now I saw it differently. All I could think was, who else sat here while I was gone? I got up, went to the fridge, pulled out a beer. The label was cold, but I didn't feel like drinking. I set it on the counter, stared out the window at the backyard. The grass needed mowing. The fence needed painting. Life went on with or without me. I felt a simmering anger rise up again. Not just at her, but at everything. The phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later she walked in. She paused in the doorway when she saw me. Her expression was unreadable. She just slipped off her shoes, set them aside like it was any other day. I folded my arms, leaned against the counter. You want to say something? I asked quietly. She pressed her lips together. I assume you know. So, no, I don't have anything to say, she replied. Her voice was flat. You did what you did. I did what I did. It's done. My jaw worked, but I couldn't speak. I finally forced out. How long? She shrugged, looked away. A while. Does it matter? I felt my chest tighten. Yeah, it matters, I growled. But she just shook her head, walked past me, and went into the bedroom. Closed the door. A few seconds later, I heard the lock click. That was her answer, it doesn't matter. For a week or so, we barely spoke. I'd crash on the couch or sometimes stay in the truck, claiming I had early runs or late deliveries. She didn't ask questions. I guess she didn't care enough to pretend. We were just two strangers under one roof, avoiding each other. Jason tried to reach out a couple times, inviting me for a beer, but I always said no. Couldn't face him. Didn't want to see that pity or curiosity in his eyes. Then one afternoon, I was rummaging through the closet looking for an old coat. Instead, I found her old phone, stuffed in a box under some winter sweaters. Maybe it was from a year or two back. I glanced at it. For some reason, I decided to see if it still turned on. I held the power button, and to my surprise it lit up. Battery was low, but it booted. The screen showed a few icons, some photos. My heart pounded. Curiosity got the best of me. I opened the gallery. There they were. Pictures of her with different men. Some older, some younger. Selfies in our living room, on our couch, sometimes the bed, sometimes even the kitchen table. My throat went dry. I scrolled and saw timestamps from months ago. This wasn't a one-time thing. She'd been doing this behind my back for who knows how long. There were voice memos too. I played one. Her laughter filled the speaker, a sound that used to comfort me but now felt like a punch to the gut. A man's voice in the background muffled. Then she said, "He's like a dad but not like a man, you know? He's just there, paying bills and fixing stuff, but it doesn't feel like I'm with a real man." I dropped the phone. My hand was shaking. That phrase echoed in my head. Like a dad but not like a man. All these years I'd worked hard, tried to provide, tried to keep things steady. And that was how she saw me, a placeholder. A wallet with legs, an aging body that couldn't satisfy her. I felt the roaring in my ears. I picked up the phone, scrolled through more pictures. They were scattered across months and months. Different men, different angles. Some voice messages had her moaning, some had her whispering. My stomach churned. I felt sick, humiliated. I sat there for a long time, phone in hand. Finally, I took a breath. Stood up. Calm. Numb, really. I didn't confront her. I didn't smash the phone. Instead, I turned it off, tucked it back into the box, pushed the box behind the sweaters again. Then I went to the backyard, lit a cigarette though I hadn't smoked in years. I stood by the fence, stared at the neighbor's tidy lawn, the sunlight on the grass. My mind was spinning with anger, shame, and a dark sense of clarity. That's when I decided. I wasn't going to argue, yell, or beg. I was done. I'd get a lawyer, do it right. Take back what was mine and leave her with the consequences. A plan formed in my head bit by bit. I called my brother from the driveway. He'd mentioned a friend who practiced family law. We talked briefly. He gave me a number. I wrote it down on the back of a grocery receipt. That evening, while she was out, I didn't ask where. I used the living room phone and called the lawyer's office. Over the next week, we put everything in motion. I opened a separate bank account in a different town. Went in person so there'd be less trace. I sold my old fishing boat, got a decent chunk of cash, deposited it quietly. Little by little, I withdrew funds from our joint savings. Nothing big enough to raise alarm, but enough that after a week, I had a sizable amount set aside. The lawyer drew up the papers, spelled out the distribution. Since the mortgage was in my name originally, and she never bothered to put hers on it, the lawyer said it was easy to keep the house. I'd pay off the remainder and effectively own it. Meanwhile, she'd get almost nothing. There was no prenuptial agreement, but given the evidence of her multiple affairs, the lawyer was confident she wouldn't contest it. Or if she did, we had leverage. The photos, the messages, the testimonies I could gather. It was cold, it was calculating, and I felt no guilt. The day before her birthday, I spent the morning at the bank finalizing that last payment on the mortgage. The teller congratulated me, asked if I planned to celebrate. I just gave a stiff nod. She had no idea what I was about to do. I went home and put everything in a large envelope. The divorce papers, copies of the pictures, the phone transcripts, and a bank statement showing the final payment on the house. All in my name now. Then I wrote a short note. You have nothing. Don't come looking for anything else. My hand shook as I wrote, but I kept it short, almost formal. I laid the envelope on the kitchen table. Next to it, I placed the check stubs, the official letter from the lawyer, everything. Even the receipts for the boat sale. She'd see how I got the money. She'd see how I sold it, and quietly slipped the funds away. I took a final look around the kitchen. Remembered the times I'd cooked breakfast here, the times she teased me about my cooking skills. That felt like a lifetime ago. I turned, grabbed a couple of shirts, some pants, tossed them into a duffel bag. I left the furniture, the TV, didn't want them. I locked the front door behind me. Part of me wondered if I should just leave it unlocked, but no. I wanted it locked. Symbolic, maybe? I didn't say goodbye. She was at work, or wherever she spent her day. I didn't care. I tossed the bag into my old pickup, the one that smelled faintly of fish and sweat from the warehouse shifts. Then I drove out to the outskirts of town where I'd already found a used trailer for rent. It wasn't much, just a small unit with peeling paint. But it had 4 walls, a roof, and a bed. That was all I needed. For the first few days, I half expected her to call or show up, screaming or crying. But she never did. Maybe she saw the envelope and realized she had no ground to stand on. Maybe she went to a friend's house. I didn't know. Didn't lose sleep over it. I was just relieved to be done with her. The lawyer said we'd finalize the divorce in a month or so, pending any dispute. Meanwhile, she had the bed and a microwave, as far as I knew. I'd canceled the furniture payments, or turned them over in my name so she couldn't keep them. I felt no pity. She'd made her choices. She'd called me a dad but not a man. Well, a dad can still do damage if you cross him. So now I live in a trailer on a patch of dirt a few miles out from town. It's quiet, except for the wind rustling through the scrubbed grass. I got a little folding table inside, a single chair. A narrow cot that squeaks if I move too fast. The walls are thin, and the place smells like cheap wood paneling. But it's mine. I pay the monthly rent on time, keep to myself. Some days I wake up early, sit on the steps with a cup of black coffee, and watch the sun peek over the horizon. It's not luxurious, but I can breathe here. I'm still working at the warehouse. The boss never followed up much about Evan. I figure the kid probably made it back somehow, might have told some story, but no one's seen him around. Word is he never showed up again after that. Some of the guys ask me what really happened. I just shrug and say he took off. I guess that's partly true. People can believe what they want. Jason occasionally asks if I'm okay. I just give a small nod. I don't think he really wants the details, and I don't feel like reliving them. My brother offered to let me stay with him for a while, but I said no. I like my space, even if it's cramped and lonely. At least I don't have to worry about walking in on someone who doesn't belong there. Some nights I dream about the old house. Dream about me and her watching TV together, or me cooking while she laughs about how I always burn the toast. Then I wake up in a cold sweat, remembering how real it felt. Takes me a minute to reorient, to realize I'm in my trailer, that everything's different now. When the divorce was finally done, I took a day off work. Went down to the courthouse, signed a few papers, listened to a judge say some official words. She wasn't even there in person, her lawyer appeared on her behalf. Afterward, I walked out into the bright sunshine, a free man. I didn't feel triumph or happiness. Just relief, maybe a bit of emptiness. I got in my truck and drove around aimlessly for a while, ended up at a diner. Ate a plate of bacon and eggs, stared at the grease collecting on the plate, thought about all those nights on the road. Thought about the day I caught them. The moment I opened the bedroom door. It still stings. Probably always will. Sometimes people ask if I regret anything. Did I act too harshly, leaving Evan like that, or leaving her with nothing? If I'm honest, I can't say I regret it. Because regret would mean I wish I'd done something else. But I don't see what else there was to do. She tore up what we had. Maybe I should have seen it coming. Maybe I should have left earlier. But regrets don't change the past. We do what we do in the moment, and then we live with it. Every morning, I use the same old ceramic bowl for cereal or oatmeal. Came from my old kitchen, one of the few things I grabbed on my way out. It's chipped on the rim. Sometimes I run my thumb across that jagged edge, think about how it used to sit in the cupboard next to her fancy dishware. Funny how a single bowl can carry so many memories. But I don't throw it away. It's mine. A reminder, maybe, that not everything I had was fake. I haven't been fishing since I sold the boat. Don't even know if I'd enjoy it anymore. The water used to be my escape, back when I needed time to think. But now that everything's out in the open, I don't need to run to a lake or a river to process it. The quiet of my trailer is enough. Sometimes I miss that gentle rocking of the boat, but then I remember I sold it for a reason. Once in a while, I drive by the old house. Just to see if there's any sign of her. The lawn's overgrown, a for sale sign hammered into the dirt. She must have put it up for sale, or maybe the bank is forcing it. Hard to say. I don't stop. I just glance at it from the window of my truck, then keep going. No point in going back inside. Everything that mattered in there is gone, or it wasn't real to begin with. At work, things are more or less the same. I load up trucks, fill out paperwork, chat with Jason about baseball or the weather. Sometimes I see a forklift driver who's the same age as Evan, and I wonder if the kid ever got back on his feet. Part of me hopes he learned something from it, that messing around with a married woman isn't just some casual fling. But maybe he doesn't think that deep. I try not to dwell on it. That part of my story is over, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not happy, but I'm not miserable either. It's like I'm in between. And that's okay. Some days I catch myself staring into space, recalling that moment when I stood in the doorway of my own bedroom. How everything shattered in an instant. I can still see her disinterested face, the kid's startled eyes, the sunlight coming through the blinds catching the dust in the air. It's etched in my mind. But I don't flinch anymore when I think about it. My pulse doesn't race. It's just a fact of my life now. People talk about closure. I'm not sure there's such a thing. The memory doesn't vanish or wrap up neatly. It just becomes part of you. You learn to live with it, the same way you learn to live with a bad back or an old scar. You manage it day by day. You focus on the next shift at work, the next meal, the next night's sleep. You keep going. Do I hate her? I don't think so. Maybe for a while I did. But hate takes too much energy. She made her choices. I made mine. End of story. I do feel something, though, like a lingering bitterness or a dull ache. A sense of betrayal that probably won't go away. But that's my burden now. And I accept it. Because I'd rather carry that weight on my own than share a home with someone who felt nothing for me. So here I am. Wake up in a trailer, eat from a chipped bowl, drive to a job that smells like fish and diesel. Then I come back, read a newspaper or watch the sky get dark through the trailer window. Simple routine. Not the life I pictured when I was younger. But it's where I ended up. And I can live with it. Because when I think about that night, how she turned her head, how I poured chili sauce on the pillow, yeah, it hurts. But I don't blink anymore. I don't look away from it. That moment is mine to keep. And I can't say I regret a damn thing.